Hello, and welcome back to It's a Scullion Thing. You came back. Yay! Can I just say, though, I think that says more about you as a person. You see, I have no choice. I was born into this madness. But you chose to come back. I mean, I'm not judging. This is a safe place for misfits like us. If you're joining us for the first time, this is the podcast where the crack is 90, chaos is guaranteed, and the madness, well, that's just part of our charm. This is the story of the Scullion family, my family. But it's not just a trip down memory lane. This is a wild ride through family, love, loyalty, and the unbreakable spirit of Belfast in the 1970s. Close your eyes. Picture the scene. A single mummy, one woman, trying to wrangle 11 children, smack bang in the middle of West Belfast during the Troubles. This isn't the Waltons, folks. This is more like if Shameless had a baby with the Peaky Blinders, but with stronger Belfast accents, more cursing, and a lot less money. We're talking 6 girls, 5 boys, all crammed into a house, bursting at the seams, where personal space was as rare as a quiet day on the Falls Road. Sibling rivalry was a full contact sport, and making it through the day without having to wear someone else's knickers, shoes or socks was basically considered winning at life. Add in political turmoil and the daily grind of life in West Belfast. No jobs, no money, and the odd rubber bullet flying past your head. And you've got yourself an absolute recipe for mayhem. But sure, isn't that where all the best stories come from? All these stories are about the OG Scullions, the original lineup, Bridie's army. And they're all, at least, 95% true, with a wee sprinkle of magic just to make them suitable for public consumption. I'll be your host. I'm Brona Scullion, the oldest Scullion grandchild. I grew up slap bang in the middle of this madhouse with all my aunts and uncles. I've heard all these stories growing up. I've even lived through some of them. Just about. And oh yes, I will get to that. This is Belfast. This is my family. This is It's a Scullion Thing. Today's tale is called Sean Scullion and the Moron Mafia, the great West Belfast hijacking that left the Ra in stitches. But before we go any further, I have to warn you, this Scullion story is full of bad language and one very poorly thought out hijacking attempt. So, if you're not a fan of cursing, or if hearing about daft criminal activity gets you running for the door, this is not the podcast for you. So you need to switch off now. You have been warned. I'm just going to start by saying the Scullion children really were good kids. They just didn't have the sense they were born with. This story stars a young Sean Scullion and his merry band of morons. Our Sean was the youngest boy of the family, and this elevated him to a godlike status. My granny, the lovely woman that she was kind of raised under the Handmaid's Tale regime, like most Irish mummies, and in turn, she tried to raise her kids the same way. The boys didn't have to do anything. They were gods. The girls lived to serve. But you see, that really didn't go down well with the girls in our house. Anyway, I digress. The point is, our Sean could do no wrong. He was the golden child. Ah, he was the best wee boy. Yes, and isn't everybody in front of their mummies? This story, lads, honestly, you know what? It's a good thing my granny didn't know half the shit her kids got up to, because if she had, she would have ended up in a rubber room. That's not even a joke. So, the story goes, a riot broke out in Andersonstown. Now, in the 70s, there was a riot in Andersonstown every other day. It was literally part of your weekly routine. Monday, milk. Tuesday, bingo. Wednesday, petrol bombs. Andersonstown had that many riots that stall holders started showing up like it was bloody market day and setting up right slap bang in the middle of them, selling things like stupid hats, sticks of rock, candy dummies, you know, stuff you get at the seaside. No, I am just joking about that. They would sell fruit and veg. You can't get arrested for selling fruit and veg, right? But you know what you can do with fruit and veg? You can throw them. Did you ever get hit on the side of the head with a potato or an onion? No? Well, please don't be stupid and try this at home. Take my word for it. It fucking hurts. Anyway, the fruit and veg guys were making a killing. Oops. Bad choice of words, Brona. So, this riot broke out. Rubber bullets were flying everywhere. The Brits were out in their full riot gear. It was total chaos. And there was our Sean and his merry band of morons, right slap bang, in the middle, having loads of fun, launching their onions at the Brits. When Sean looked down on the ground, and there it was, a replica rifle. Just then, the clouds parted and hit the rifle with a little ray of sunshine. In our Sean's head, it was as if God himself was telling him to pick it up. Dickhead. Any normal person would have run as far away from that thing as their legs could carry them. But not our Sean. Oh no, that bold wee fucker was going to have some fun. Okay, but before we go any further, let's address the elephant in the room. Why, I hear you ask, was there a replica rifle on the ground in the middle of a housing estate in broad daylight? To be fair, it's a very valid question, and one I had always asked myself. So, I did a little digging, and here's what I got. This is a little known fact, but apparently, back in the day, the Irish Republican Army loved a wee bit of the old razzle-dazzle, and sometimes they would swap out the real stuff for knockoffs to, you know, put on a show, or just basically have you pissing yourself with fear. And I think the less I say about that, the better. If you need any more info, go ask the Google. That's where I got my info. So anyway, back to the story. A young Sean grabs the gun and the boys take off running back to their den, where they would come up with their master plan. Their den, let's be honest, was probably an old mattress among some trees. So back at the den, the boys start firing out ideas what to do with the replica gun. One boy shouts, "Let's rob a bank!" Another boy shouts, "Let's rob a sweet shop!" A young Sean is being very quiet in the corner, brooding and in deep thought. Well, as deep in thought as a 14-year-old boy can be. Boys were all overexcited now. If there had been a ceiling in that den, they would have needed to be peeled off it. "What will we do, Sean? What will we do?" The boys crowd around Sean. A young Sean slowly turns like some sort of teenage Tony Soprano and says, "We're gonna hijack a car." The boys lose their mind. They're bouncing around now like it's Christmas Eve. "We're gonna hijack a car! We're gonna hijack a car!" They all start saying to each other. "Yes," Sean says. "We'll hijack it, we'll take it for a joyride, and then we'll burn it out." Gasps filled the den. The boys were almost peeing themselves with excitement. "We're gonna hijack a car! We're gonna hijack a car! Yes!" Again, please remember, these are kids living in a war zone in a time without internet. Seriously, what could go wrong? So, the boys set out making their plans. The plan was simple. They would hide in the bushes, jump out at the next car or van that drove by, and take it. Simple, right? Yes, but this is a Scullion story. Off the boys head, down the Glen Road. They have a plan, or at least what passes for a plan at 14. They pick their spot, and they climb into the bushes like guerrilla warriors. If guerrilla warriors wore flowers and smelled like chip pan grease. The excitement was palpable. Their hearts were racing. The adrenaline was pumping. These boys were about to hit the big time. They had their homemade ballys on. Most of the boys had stolen pillowcases from their mummies' houses and ripped holes in the eyes. One boy had just used an old potato sack, and believe it or not, he was the smart one. Because while the other boys would get a hiding when they got home for ripping up a perfectly good pillowcase, he was sitting pretty. So the boys are all ballied up in the bushes. Honestly, these boys looked more like something from Deliverance, not something from the Irish Republican Army. But no matter, these boys were tough guys. They were men now, and they were going to hijack a car or a van. They really weren't fussy. They were tough. They had a gun, and no one would dare mess with them. The boys are just about ready to pee themselves with excitement when they see it. A grey van is approaching. "Right, this is it, boys," Sean barks. Sean had the replica gun because he was the biggest of the boys, standing at an impressive 6'2" at 14. This automatically made him the leader. "Let's go!" Sean roars. So the boys jump out of the bushes. Sean jumps in front of the van, holding the fake rifle. "Stop!" the boys screamed. "Stop the van! Get out! Get on the fucking ground! Now!" The van screeches to a halt. The boys began walking around to the driver's side of the van, all the while screaming, "Get out of the van! Get out of the van!" But no one was moving. Why aren't these fuckers getting out? Couldn't they see they had a gun pointed right at them? John barks again. "Get out of the van! Now!" As he walked round the driver's side, all the boys were standing looking at each other. Why the fuck aren't these getting out of the van? Then, slowly, the driver's window starts to come down. Now, this was a time before electric windows, where you had to have arms like Arnie to get them open. So slowly, the driver's window starts to come down. And then they see it. A gun. A real fucking gun. The boys freeze. Sean drops the replica rifle straight onto the ground, with a bang that sounded far too realistic. All the boys threw their hands up in the air, and one boy, God love him, he actually peed his pants. I think it just got a wee bit too much for him at this point. But, to be fair, I think I'd probably do the same if I was in that situation. I'm just not stupid enough to ever be in that situation. Then, the man leans out the window. He had a proper balaclava on. He points the gun at the boys, and in a waving, dismissive motion, looks directly at our Sean and says, "Not today, boys. We're on a job. Take the next one." Laughter breaks out in the van. Oh well, it was only the bloody rat that these criminal geniuses had tried to hijack. The arses fell out of all these poor wee boys. They moved aside, still with their hands in the air, just like in the movies. The driver started to roll up the window and drive off. The boys could hear the men roaring laughing as they drove away. Their life of crime was over. They walked home in silence. They whipped the pillowcases and potato sack off their heads in pure disgust. Not a word spoken, just the shuffle of shame as they started the long march up the hill. Sean threw the replica rifle in the bushes like it had personally betrayed him. They had been defeated by nerves, a plastic gun, and the harsh realization that none of them were actually tough guys. They walked home in silence, and the only thing they were guilty of that day was being absolute fucking eejits. Now, in my opinion, the Ra saved those wee boys' lives that day. They never tried anything like that again. Or did they? And that, folks, was another episode of It's the Scullion Thing. And if you've made it this far without needing therapy, fair play. You're our kind of people. Don't worry, there's plenty more where that came from. Madder stories, worse decisions, and even less parental supervision. I'll be back next week with another totally true tale from the Scullion archives. So, if you enjoyed the crack, please like, share, follow, subscribe. Tell a mate, tell your ma, or just shout it out the window like we used to do in the 70s. Oh, and if you happen to be a member of the Irish Republican Army in the 70s, please don't feel the need to correct me on anything. You should correct the Google. That's where I got my intel from. Until next week, mind yourselves. See you soon. Bye.